The dawn that morning tasted of dust. Illyra felt it coating her tongue as she stepped out of the cabin for what she didn't yet know would be the last time. The air was gray with early light, the kind that softened the edges of the world but sharpened every memory. She leaned against the doorframe for a moment, letting her stiff right leg catch up to her. The familiar ache crawling from calf to hip, like cold lightning. Her father barely glanced at her. "Get in the wagon," he said, as if she were a sack of grain he was tired of storing. No explanation, no hint of where she was going or why, but she understood. She'd felt the tension for weeks, felt it in the way her father avoided her eyes, in the whispers her mother thought she didn't hear, in the way her younger siblings had grown strangely silent around her, as though her presence brought on some curse. A lame daughter, her father called her when he thought she wasn't listening. A burden, a mistake, a reminder of disobedience. Her limp was not born of illness, nor misfortune, nor accident. It was punishment, a punishment that had crushed bone and tendon and childhood all at once. She climbed into the wagon slowly, using her hands for balance. The boards were rough, splintering beneath her palms. Her father didn't offer help. He never did, not since the day he tied her to the hitching post and allowed a man she refused to marry to twist her leg until it broke. That memory lived in her like a second heartbeat. The snap, the scream she swallowed so no one would say she was weak. The silence that followed. She remembered her mother cutting the rope later, not out of compassion, but because the sun had set and the neighbors might gossip if they saw the family's shame displayed in the yard. "Had you obeyed," her mother had whispered, "none of this would have happened." Illyra had believed that once, but not anymore. As the wagon lurched forward, she pressed her fingers to the edge of the seat and stared back at the cabin. It had never been home, only a place where she survived. She watched as the distance grew between her and the only world she'd known. No warmth tugged at her chest, no sorrow, only a strange emptiness, like grief with its edges worn smooth. Her father drove fast, as if rushing to be rid of her. He didn't speak. She didn't ask questions. She had learned years ago that questions earned nothing but anger. The plains stretched on, golden and merciless. A hawk circled overhead, the only witness to her exile. Hours passed before the outpost came into view, little more than a crooked row of wooden structures surrounded by dust and restless wind. A trading post, a blacksmith's shed, a large barn where livestock was held until buyers arrived. It wasn't a large settlement. It was the kind of place where deals were made quickly and without witnesses. Her father stopped the wagon beside a group of men standing near a corral. One of them, a wiry man with greasy hair, approached with a grin that made Illyra's skin crawl. "This her?" he asked. Her father nodded, as agreed. The man circled her like someone examining a mule. He didn't look at her face. He looked at her hips, her legs, her hands. "Where's the mark?" Without waiting for consent, he grabbed her arm and turned it, searching for proof of injury. "She's got a limp," her father said. "Had it for years. Won't heal. Useless for farm work. But she can clean, cook, stitch if you can get her to move fast enough." Illyra kept her eyes forward. She refused to flinch. She refused to show fear. The man nodded, satisfied. "I'll take her. She'll sell well enough. Some people'll buy anything if the price is low. Sell. Not marry. Not apprentice. Sell. Her father handed her over the way a rancher hands over a heifer, past its usefulness. The trader handed him coins. Her father weighed them, counted them, pocketed them. Never once did he look at her. Never once did he say goodbye. And then he climbed into the wagon and rode away. No dust cloud lingered long enough to pretend he hesitated. Illyra stood alone. The trader shoved her toward the barn. Stay there, someone'll look you over later. Inside the dim building, livestock bleated and shuffled. She found a corner away from the noise and leaned against a post, letting her leg rest. The ache pulsed, steady and familiar, but she pushed it aside. Pain had become her shadow. It followed, but it no longer controlled her. Hours passed. People came and went. Men looking for workhorses, women buying cloth, cowboys trading saddles. Some glanced at her and turned away. Others stared openly, whispering, "That one limps. Doubt she's worth $1. Families shouldn't dump their broken things here. Shame. Pretty face, though. Pretty. She used to be pretty. Now she simply felt invisible." Then everything changed. Not with loudness, not with drama, but with a presence so calm it quieted every sound around her. He walked into the barn. Tall, broad-shouldered, clean boots, dusted coat, hat pulled low. He carried himself with the unhurried confidence of a man who didn't need to prove anything. His jaw was strong, his eyes unreadable from a distance, but his posture said he was not like the others. Men who spit, laughed crudely, or kicked at crates as they passed. He moved with purpose, and he looked at everything. Not just the animals, not just the equipment, everything. His gaze swept the barn once, twice, then stopped on her. Not on her leg, not on the way she held the post for support, not on the worn shawl around her shoulders. On her eyes. It startled her. Most people looked at her limp first. Some never looked beyond it. But this stranger studied her face as if he were reading something written there. Not pity, not disgust, but curiosity tinted with something softer. Something she couldn't name. He approached slowly. The barn seemed to quiet with each step he took. The trader hurried over, rubbing his hands. "Fine selection today. Horses, tools, and if you're looking for help around the ranch, I've got." His gesture landed on her. "This girl," he said, "strong enough for chores. Don't mind the limp. She can—" "Her name?" the stranger asked. The trader blinked. "Name?" "Yes." The man folded his arms. "She has one, doesn't she?" It had been so long since anyone asked that Illyra felt her breath catch. "Illyra," she whispered. The man nodded at her, then looked sharply at the trader. "Did you sell her family's daughter without recording her identity?" The trader coughed. "Ah, well, some folks don't care about." "I care," the man said. The trader swallowed hard. Illyra studied him more carefully now. A rancher, by the looks of him, but not an ordinary one. His clothes were too fine, his confidence too natural. A wealthy man, but one without arrogance. "Come here," he said to her, but gently, like an invitation, not a command. She hesitated. Her leg trembled a little as she stepped forward. The barn floor creaked beneath her. He waited patiently. When she reached him, he didn't examine her the way the trader had. He didn't touch her. He simply looked at her, truly looked, in a way that made her heartbeat stumble. "What happened to your leg?" he asked quietly. The trader jumped in. "She was born wrong. Weak bones. Nothing useful. Illyra lifted her chin. No, she said. Both men looked at her. I wasn't born lame. The trader scowled. Girl. But the rancher raised a hand, silencing him with a gesture that carried the weight of command. Illyra swallowed. Her throat burned, but she held her ground. My father did it, she said, because I refused to marry the man he chose. The truth hung in the dusty air. The rancher didn't look shocked. He didn't look horrified. He looked furious, but not at her. Thank you, he said softly, for telling me. No one had thanked her for anything in years. And in that moment, one heartbeat, one breath, one simple kindness, her entire world shifted. The man wasn't just seeing her. He believed her. The rancher did not speak immediately after hearing her truth. Instead, he stood there in the dusty barn aisle, shoulders rigid, jaw tight enough to crack stone, as though restraining a fury that did not belong to this quiet place. His eyes, clear, sharp, and unsettlingly focused, stayed on Illyra with a strange intensity that made her want to step back and step closer at the same time. She waited. She had been waiting all her life for someone to listen, for someone to question, for someone to see. But she had not expected it to feel like this, like a pressure easing in her chest, like a door finally unlocking. What's your name? He asked again, but softer, gentler, as though wanting to anchor her to something real. Illyra, she said. Her voice didn't waver this time. He nodded. Illyra. He repeated it like it mattered, like it needed to be said right. My name is Rowan Hale. Rowan. The name suited him. Strong without being harsh. Grounded without being arrogant. The trader cleared his throat loudly, trying to regain control of the conversation. Now, Mr. Hale, as I said, she's good for simple chores. Rowan turned to him with a coldness that made the smaller man swallow hard. You lied, Rowan said. The trader blinked. Lied? No, You told me she was born lame, that she was weak, that she couldn't do much. And yet... He looked at Illyra again, and there was something new in his gaze now. Respect. Recognition. She survived an injury that would have broken most grown men. Illyra felt heat rise in her cheeks. Not humiliation, but something warm she hadn't felt in years. Pride. I don't want lies, Rowan continued. I want facts, truth, and you've given me none. The trader's mouth opened and shut like a fish desperate for water. It don't matter how it happened. She's damaged goods. Nobody else wants her. Take her or leave her, Mr. Hale. Rowan's eyes narrowed. Illyra tensed. Men like her father had that same look, just before the shouting, the hitting, the twisting pain of punishment. She braced herself instinctively, legs stiffening, fingers curling into the fabric of her shawl. But Rowan didn't raise a hand. He raised his voice instead, quietly, but with a blade-sharp edge. You speak about her as if she's livestock, he said. Do you have any idea how wrong that is? The trader sputtered. She was sold by her own family. That reflects on them, Rowan said, not on her. Something inside Illyra broke then, not painfully, but like ice melting after a long winter. Her throat tightened. She looked down, not to hide tears, but because no one had ever taken her side. No one had defended her. No one had spoken with that kind of conviction for her sake. Not since she was a child. Not since before the rope, before the breaking. Rowan stepped closer, not too close, not in a way that threatened, but in a way that made it clear he was choosing to stand beside her, not above her. Illyra, he said softly, do you want to leave with me? The question stunned her. Leave? With him? A rancher, wealthy, respected, clearly powerful, was offering her a choice she had never been granted in her entire life. A choice. Not an order, not a demand. Her breath caught, trembling in her chest. "What would I be to you?" she whispered. She had to ask. She would not be someone's burden, someone's chained possession, someone's thrown-away thing again. Rowan's expression didn't shift into amusement or impatience. If anything, it softened. "You would be free," he said. Free. The word felt dangerous, blasphemous, beautiful. She blinked. Surely she had misheard. Rowan continued, "You'd work, if you're able and willing, not because you're owned, but because you'd live on my land. And on my land, we all help each other. You'd have room, food, safety. No one would lay a hand on you. No one would command you like cattle." Elira stared at him, stunned. People didn't speak like that here. Not in these parts. Not in her world. The trader scoffed. "You're speaking like she's some lady." Rowan turned toward him slowly, and the trader fell silent beneath the weight of his gaze. "She is a human being," Rowan said, "and I expect you to speak to her, and about her, accordingly." The trader shut his mouth and stepped away, sullen and irritated, but too intimidated to argue. Rowan reached into his coat, pulled out a worn leather pouch, and counted coins into the trader's eager hands. Twice the amount her father had received. Maybe thrice. She wasn't sure whether she should feel gratitude or shame. Rowan must have sensed her confusion, because after he finished the transaction, he stepped toward her again. "You are not something I bought," he said. "I paid him to get him out of your life, not to put chains on you." Her breath trembled. She tried to speak, but her voice caught. Rowan extended his hand, not to seize her, not to pull her, but open-palmed, waiting for her choice. The barn was quiet. Dust floated in the beams of light like suspended stars. Elira hesitated, her fingers trembling. Touching his hand felt like stepping off a cliff, like stepping out of the shadow she had lived under since childhood, like stepping into a future she didn't dare imagine. "What if I slow you down?" she asked quietly. "My leg, it doesn't always move the way I want." Rowan's answer was instantaneous. "Then I'll slow down with you." Her throat closed in a soundless gasp. "No one has ever." "I'm not no one," Rowan said, "and you're not broken." She looked at him long enough to see he meant it. Not with pity, but with certainty. Her fingers moved. Slowly, fearfully, then finally, bravely. She placed her hand in his. His palm was warm, firm, steady, not claiming, not trapping, just holding. He gave her hand the slightest squeeze, not to lead, but to reassure. "Elira," he said, "you'll ride back with me. You can rest your leg in the wagon. It's a long ride home." Home. The word fluttered against her ribs like a startled bird. She had never had one. Rowan guided her out of the barn, matching her pace, watching her steps, but not staring at her limp. He walked beside her as though her uneven gait was simply another part of the world. Not something to be judged, but something to be understood. When they reached his wagon, he helped her up carefully, supporting her elbow without gripping too tightly. She sat on the cushioned bench, softer than anything she had known in years. Rowan climbed up beside her, took the reins, and with a gentle click of his tongue, the horses started forward. Dust rose behind them, swirling like fading ghosts. Elira watched the outpost disappear in the distance. For the first time, She didn't feel like she was being dragged into the unknown. She felt like she was being carried out of a grave she didn't realize she'd been buried in. Rowan didn't speak immediately. He let the silence settle, let her breathe. The road stretched long before them, but for once she did not fear the journey. Only after several minutes did he glance at her. "Alira," he said, "I meant what I said back there. You're safe with me." She turned toward him, studying his face. There was no deceit in his expression, no ulterior motive, just a steady, quiet certainty. "Still," she whispered, "why? Why help someone like me?" He kept his eyes on the horizon, but his voice carried a weight that made her listen closely. "Because the first time I looked at you," he said, "I didn't see a lame girl." Her breath stilled. "I saw courage," he said, "the kind a person can't fake." Wind brushed her cheek softly. Her hands tightened around her shawl. "And I saw truth in your eyes," Rowan finished. "The truth your family refused to see." Her heart stuttered painfully, because no one had ever spoken about her that way. No one had ever seen her without immediately seeing her limp. She turned forward again, swallowing the sudden rush of emotion. Rowan Hale had seen strength where others saw weakness. But more than that, he had seen her. The wagon rolled steadily across the plains, creaking and swaying over uneven ground. Dust kicked up behind the horses, clinging to Alira's clothes and settling in her hair. She kept her gaze forward, watching the horizon blur in shades of gold and gray. Every few moments, she shifted her weight, feeling the persistent ache in her leg. Pain had become a companion, and though it bit sharply, she refused to let it define her. She would not stumble in front of Rowan, not after all she had endured. Rowan drove with a practiced hand, the reins held loosely yet firmly. He was quiet, almost contemplative, letting the rhythm of the horses set the pace. Occasionally, he glanced at her, not with worry, but with that careful attention that told her he was observing without judgment. It was the first time in her life that someone had truly watched her, not for her weakness, not for her usefulness, but for the person she was beneath it all. The silence between them was comfortable. It was not heavy with expectation, nor awkward with forced conversation. It was a silence that promised patience and safety, something Alira had never known. She had survived being sold like property, being called lame and useless, and being abandoned by those who were supposed to love her. Yet here, beside Rowan, the world felt different. It felt possible. She spoke first, almost reluctantly. "Where are we going?" Her voice was quiet, almost fragile, like testing the air for its warmth. "To my ranch," Rowan replied. "Far enough from here that no one will recognize you. You'll have time to heal, to breathe, to think." She hesitated. "Why? Why help me? You don't even know me." He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he let the wagon roll on. Dust spiraled in the wind, caught in the sunlight, making the world shimmer in muted gold. Finally, after a long moment, he said, "Because no one deserves what was done to you. Because someone has to see the truth when others refuse." Alira's chest tightened. She blinked against the dust, trying to hold back a sudden surge of tears she did not understand. She had never been treated like a person before, not by her father, not by the traitor, not by anyone. And yet here was someone who had paid more for her freedom than her father ever could, who refused to see her injury as a limitation, who recognized the courage that had carried her through years of silent suffering. They traveled for hours. The land stretched endlessly, the plains rolling like waves frozen in time. Occasionally, a hawk would circle overhead, its shadow fleeting across the ground. The wind carried a mix of scents: wildflowers, dry grass, horse sweat, dust. But under them all, there was a sense of possibility, of something unspoken but waiting. Rowan glanced at her again. "You've been through much," he said quietly. "I can see it in the way you move, the way you hold yourself. And yet, here you are. You're still standing." Elira shifted, her leg protesting with every subtle adjustment. "I've had no choice but to stand," she admitted. "No one would let me lie down." He gave a small nod, as if acknowledging her truth. "But standing isn't enough. You deserve to walk freely, on your own terms." She looked down at her leg, then back to him. "You don't understand. It's not just my leg. It's everything. My family. They sold me, treated me as though my life had no value. And the world? I've learned to fear it." Rowan's hand rested briefly on the edge of the wagon, not touching her, not intruding, but steadying the space around them. "The world is cruel," he admitted, "but not everyone is. And sometimes the world surprises you. I see that in you." Her gaze softened, a flicker of trust forming where fear had lived for years. "I don't know how to live outside of fear," she whispered. "You will," he said. "It takes time, but you'll learn, and you won't have to do it alone." The horizon shifted with the sun, the gold of the plains deepening as it began its slow descent. The wagon rumbled on, and Elira felt a subtle shift within herself, a sense that her life could be more than endurance, that the choices she had been denied might be hers again. She spoke hesitantly, testing the new reality. "And if I can't keep up?" Her voice carried the weight of years of doubt and insecurity. Rowan's eyes met hers, steady and unwavering. "Then I'll walk with you. I won't let your leg, or anything else, dictate your worth." The words struck her like a revelation. For the first time, someone had not only recognized her pain, but had refused to let it define her. She could feel her heart, long encased in layers of hurt and mistrust, beginning to thaw. As the hours passed, the wagon climbed a gentle rise, revealing a view of distant hills and the hint of a river glinting in the late afternoon sun. The beauty of it nearly took her breath away. She had seen the plains before, but never like this, with someone who seemed to understand the weight of what she carried, yet refused to judge her for it. Rowan finally broke the silence. "We'll reach my ranch by nightfall," he said. "It's small, but it's safe, and it will be yours to choose how you live there." Elira nodded slowly. Her mind raced, filled with questions she didn't dare ask aloud. Could she trust him? Could she trust herself? Could she believe that the world might not be entirely cruel? The wagon continued, the horses' hooves drumming, a steady rhythm, on the hard earth. The sun began to dip, casting long shadows that stretched across the plains like reaching fingers. The wind carried the scent of sagebrush and distant pine, and Elira felt something she hadn't felt in years: anticipation. She let her head rest against the side of the wagon, her thoughts wandering through memories both painful and precious. She remembered the days when her father had praised her, the moments before the injury when she had felt invincible. She remembered the rope, the snap of bone, the silence that followed. And yet, she also remembered the countless times she had forced herself to rise, to keep moving, to survive. That strength, quiet and resilient, had brought her here. And now, beside Rowan, it felt like the first time that strength was acknowledged, not as a burden, but as a gift. By late afternoon, the plains began to thin into the first brush of forest. The wagon rattled along a narrow trail, and Illyra could see smoke curling faintly in the distance. The smell of cooked food, of wood fire and fresh bread, teased her senses. Rowan didn't mention it, but she knew instinctively they were nearing his home. The thought filled her with a strange mixture of relief and fear. Relief, because the journey's uncertainty was ending. Fear, because life had taught her that safety was often temporary. She had never known permanence, never trusted stability, never imagined anyone offering her freedom without strings attached. Rowan sensed her hesitation. "You'll like it there," he said softly. "It isn't fancy, but it's yours, and I'll make sure of it. You will never have to face the world alone again, unless you choose to." Illyra's gaze met his. For the first time, she felt the possibility of belonging, of a life where her leg did not define her, where fear was not a constant companion, and where someone recognized her value for what it truly was. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the land in hues of amber and rose, the wagon crested a hill. Below stretched a small ranch, modest but solid. Horses grazed quietly, the river glittered, and the cabin nestled against the rise with smoke drifting lazily from its chimney. It was simple, safe, whole. Illyra's chest swelled with a quiet emotion she could not name, relief, hope, and something that bordered on wonder. She was still bruised, still aching, still cautious, but the future, long denied, long feared, was finally visible. Rowan guided the horses down the slope and toward the gate. "Welcome home," he said, his voice carrying a weight she had never imagined. Certainty, promise, and safety. She looked around, taking in the sight, the freedom of wide-open spaces, the warmth of firelight yet to come, the knowledge that for the first time she had a choice. For the first time, she could be more than what others had labeled her. More than lame, more than useless, more than the girl her family had abandoned. Beside her, Rowan Hale didn't see her injury. He didn't see her past. He saw strength, courage, truth, and most importantly, potential. Illyra took a deep breath, feeling her heart rise. She had survived the cruelty of her past, the indifference of strangers, and the betrayal of those who were supposed to love her. Now, with this man who had recognized her, the journey was no longer about survival alone. It was about living. And in that moment, as the wagon rumbled into the yard, and the first smoke from the cabin's chimney curled into the evening sky, she allowed herself to believe something she hadn't dared to imagine in years. She was free. The cabin smelled of wood smoke and fresh bread, and for the first time in years, Illyra felt the strange, foreign warmth of a place she could call her own. Rowan had shown her how to settle in. Simple chores, feeding the horses, mending fences, and yet every action felt like a test, a measure of whether she was truly ready to claim this life as hers. She moved carefully, her legs still stiff and sore from years of disuse and old injury. Every step reminded her of the cruel twist of fate that had left her broken in her family's eyes, and yet stronger in ways they could never understand. She had survived physical pain, emotional cruelty, and the weight of being treated as nothing more than a commodity. And here, in the wide open spaces of Rowan's ranch, she discovered something she had forgotten. That strength, had a voice. Rowan watched from the edge of the porch, leaning casually on the railing. His presence was steadying, comforting, but never overbearing. He did not coddle her. He did not hover. Instead, he let her learn, let her explore, and let her choose. And in that choice, she began to realize something she had never known. Her body, though scarred and imperfect, was capable. Her mind, though shaped by years of fear and doubt, was sharp. Her spirit, though battered, was unbroken. One morning, Rowan handed her a set of tools. "We need a new gate on the far pasture," he said. "You'll help me." Illyra glanced at the distance, then at the uneven ground beneath her boots. The far pasture was not small. Her first instinct was to refuse, to step back and let him do it alone. But the thought of surrendering, of letting fear dictate her life, sparked something inside her, a defiance she hadn't realized had been preserved through all the years of neglect and abuse. "I'll do it," she said, her voice firm, though it trembled slightly. Rowan's eyes brightened, but he said nothing more, trusting her to act on her word. They walked side by side, and for the first time, she felt as if the world wasn't observing her for weakness. It wasn't waiting for her to stumble. It simply allowed her to be. The work was grueling. Her leg protested with every step, every bend, every heavy lift of wood. But with each movement, she discovered a rhythm that was hers alone. Her hands, once delicate and soft from lack of use, grew calloused and strong. Her back ached. But the ache was different now. It was proof of effort, of contribution, of living fully. She realized that the pain she had been taught to fear could become a companion rather than a sentence. Rowan worked quietly beside her, guiding when necessary, but never taking over. He showed her how to align the posts, how to drive nails without splitting the timber, how to measure and balance. He noticed when she hesitated, when her breath caught from the effort, when her leg faltered, and he adjusted, supported, but never diminished her. "You're stronger than you know," he said at one point, wiping sweat from his brow. "Not because I say so, but because you've been carrying more than anyone should ever carry, and you survived." She looked at him, eyes wide. For a moment, she felt something unfamiliar. Recognition. Someone was seeing her, not her injury, not her past, not the broken labels her family had branded onto her, but her true capacity. "Do you really think I can do this?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Rowan smiled gently. "I know you can. You already have." The words struck a chord. The truth of them echoed through her, a sound she hadn't heard in years. She had survived torment. She had endured betrayal. She had carried the weight of her own fear and doubt, and emerged. And now, with Rowan's quiet faith, she began to understand that her life could be something more than survival. As the sun climbed higher, the fence took shape. Illyra worked tirelessly, sweat clinging to her skin, dust in her hair, muscles burning. But every movement became easier, more confident. Rowan occasionally glanced at her, but his presence was steady, a grounding force rather than a crutch. He didn't pity her. He didn't protect her from effort. He simply acknowledged her strength and let her claim it. By the time the final post was set and the last nail driven, Illyra stood back, breathing hard, feeling the exhaustion and satisfaction of a job well done. She looked at the fence, a structure built by her hands, tested by her limits, sustained by her perseverance. She realized then that she had not only built a fence, but had rebuilt a part of herself. Rowan came up beside her, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder. "Look at what you've done," he said. "It's strong. It's steady. Just like you." Illyra's throat tightened. She wanted to laugh, cry, scream. Any emotion would have done, but instead, she simply nodded. She understood now that the lame label had never defined her. It was the world's inability to see her true self that had been flawed. Not her body, not her courage, not her heart. That night, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the ranch in shades of orange and purple, Rowan built a small fire, and they sat together, side by side. The air was crisp, carrying the sense of wood smoke and earth. The stars began to blink awake in the sky, and the wind whispered promises of new beginnings. Illyra thought about her family, about the years of rejection, the pain inflicted by those who should have loved her. She realized she no longer carried anger for the sake of bitterness. Instead, she carried it as fuel, as proof that she had endured, that she had survived, and that she had the power to choose her own path. Rowan glanced at her in the firelight. "You know," he said softly, "I never saw anyone move like you. You're careful, yes, but every step has intention. Every motion has purpose. You've been underestimated your whole life, and yet here you are, proving them all wrong." Illyra felt tears prick her eyes, but she didn't look away. She allowed herself this moment, this recognition, this validation. She had earned it. Every scar, every ache, every stumble had led her here. And now, for the first time, she could see a future not dictated by cruelty, but by her own choices. The fire crackled, casting long shadows across their faces, and Rowan reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair from her forehead, not as a gesture of pity, but of respect, of acknowledgement, of partnership. She felt the weight of the day's labor, the ache in her leg, the fatigue in her muscles, and alongside it, an emerging sense of pride. Illyra understood something profound. Her past had made her strong, yes, but it was the recognition of that strength, the acceptance of her true self, that had finally set her free. She was no longer the girl sold for being lame. She was a woman who had endured, who had survived, who had claimed her own life. And Rowan Hale, with his quiet understanding, his steady presence, and his unwavering belief in her, had given her the first true gift she had ever known. Someone who saw her for who she really was, and valued her all the same. The night deepened. The firelight flickered. Illyra leaned back, letting her body relax despite the lingering ache. And for the first time in years, she felt something she had not known was possible. A profound, unshakable peace. She had survived the cruelty of the world. She had survived the betrayal of family. And now, for the first time, she had the freedom to thrive. Dawn broke across the plains like a promise. The sun rose slowly, spilling golden light over Rowan's ranch and painting the sky in hues of rose and amber. The air smelled of fresh earth, smoke, and horses. Illyra stepped out of the cabin onto the soft morning grass, feeling the cool dew beneath her boots. Her legs still ached, a reminder of past cruelty, but it no longer held her back. Not here. Not anymore. The ranch was alive with movement, horses pawing the ground, chickens clucking, the low hum of wind through tall grass. Rowan was already out, surveying the land with practiced eyes, his silhouette framed by the rising sun. When he saw her, he offered a small, steady nod. No words were needed. She understood that he recognized her progress, her resilience, and most importantly, her choice. She had chosen to come here, to step into a life she could call her own. Elira approached him cautiously, her steps more confident than they had been in years. She noticed how he observed the land, not as a conqueror, but as a steward. He treated the earth, the animals, and the work as parts of a whole, a balance he maintained with care. And in that, she realized something about herself. She had the same sense of endurance and awareness. Her body, though scarred, moved with a precision that reflected years of struggle and survival. Her mind, sharpened by necessity, saw what others overlooked. "Morning," Rowan said simply. His voice carried calm authority, but also warmth. "Morning," Elira replied. She hesitated, then asked, "What do you want me to do today?" He smiled, just a faint curve of his lips. "Whatever you feel ready for. But I have work that requires more than just hands. You'll need your judgment, too." She nodded. Judgment, decision, responsibility. Words that had been absent in her life for so long that they felt almost foreign. Yet they stirred something fierce inside her. She realized that for the first time, she was not being directed by cruelty or necessity alone. She could choose, act, and take pride in her choices. They began walking toward the northern pasture, where a section of fence had fallen during a recent storm. The distance was challenging for her leg, but she refused to complain. Rowan noticed, but he didn't offer pity. Instead, he adjusted the pace slightly, walking beside her as an equal. Every step was deliberate. Every movement a testament to endurance, resilience, and growing confidence. "This pasture needs more than mending," Rowan said as they approached. "I want you to help me assess the soil, the grass, where we can improve grazing. Your perspective matters." Elira froze briefly. Her perspective? For years, she had been told she was incapable, worthless, lame. And now, her judgment, her mind, her observations, her insights were being asked for. She blinked against the morning sun, letting the idea sink in. Rowan saw her hesitation and placed a reassuring hand lightly on her shoulder. "I know you can do this," he said. "I've seen the strength and clarity in you. Trust it." She drew a deep breath and nodded. Her hands rested on her hips as she surveyed the land. She bent low, examining the soil with practiced attention, noting where it was dry, where it was fertile, where grazing would thrive. She marked spots in her mind, planning how the pasture could sustain the livestock better. Her mind worked like a mapmaker, calculating, observing, predicting. Rowan watched, impressed, but didn't interrupt. He let her take the lead, only offering suggestions when she asked. Hours passed. The sun climbed high, casting shadows that moved slowly across the rolling plains. The work was hard, and her leg protested, but the pain was no longer a limitation. It was a reminder of the life she had survived, the obstacles she had overcome, and the courage she had developed. Each task she completed bolstered her sense of self, confirming what Rowan had seen, that she was far stronger than anyone, including herself, had ever believed. By afternoon, they paused near a small stream that ran through the northern pasture. Rowan knelt to refill the water trough for the horses, and Elira crouched beside him, splashing cool water on her hands and face. The air was alive with birdsong, the rustle of leaves, and the distant lowing of cattle. For the first time in her life, she felt not fear, but possibility. "I can't remember the last time I felt capable," she admitted, voice low, almost trembling. "I've spent my life thinking I was worthless, broken, too weak to matter." Rowan looked at her, his gaze unwavering. "You were never worthless. You were never broken in a way that mattered. Only the world treated you as such. But I see you, Illyra. Not your leg, not your scars, not the past that tried to define you. I see your strength, your mind, your heart. And it's remarkable." Illyra swallowed, emotion catching in her throat. For years, no one had spoken like this to her. No one had truly recognized her worth. And now, the weight of it was both overwhelming and liberating. "I thank you," she whispered. Not for saving her from the traitor, not for taking her away from her family, but for seeing her as she truly was. Rowan's hand brushed lightly against hers. "You earned it," he said. "Every hardship you endured, every choice you made to keep moving forward, those brought you here. Not me, you." The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in oranges and pinks. The long shadows of the trees stretched across the pasture, and Illyra felt a deep sense of peace settling over her. The horizon seemed to promise new beginnings, a life not dictated by cruelty, by injury, by abandonment, but by her own choices. They walked back to the cabin slowly, side by side. Rowan didn't rush her. He didn't offer pity or encouragement she didn't need. He simply respected her pace, respecting her autonomy, honoring her endurance. Every step became a small victory, a reclamation of power and freedom she had been denied for so long. By nightfall, the cabin glowed with the warmth of firelight. Illyra sat by the hearth, her hands busy mending a small piece of cloth she had found in the storage chest. Rowan sat nearby, sharpening a tool, but his eyes kept finding hers. There was no pressure, no expectation, only presence. As the stars appeared, glimmering faintly in the vast night sky, Illyra felt a profound shift within herself. She had survived betrayal, abuse, and neglect. She had endured pain and prejudice. She had been sold like an object. And yet, here she was, alive, whole, respected, capable, and most importantly, free. Rowan broke the silence. "You've done more today than many do in a week," he said quietly. "And you did it with grace, strength, and intelligence. You're remarkable." Illyra looked up at him, a faint smile touching her lips. For the first time in her life, she believed it. For the first time, she believed in herself. Not because someone told her she was strong, but because she had proven it. Through action, through endurance, through courage. The night deepened, and the fire crackled. Illyra leaned back, letting the warmth seep into her bones. She felt her body, her mind, her spirit, each part of her scarred, each part of her tested, each part of her tempered by years of hardship, and yet, each part of her was alive, vibrant, and unbroken. Rowan's voice softened, almost a whisper. "This is your home now. Not mine, not your family's, but yours. Every choice, every step, every decision, yours. And I'll be here only if you want me to be." Illyra's chest swelled with emotion. She had lived her life under the weight of other people's expectations, judgments, and cruelty. Now she was free to define herself. Now she could walk her own path, no longer dictated by injury, fear, or family shame. She looked out the window, watching the moon rise above the plains. Her life had been fractured, But the pieces had come together in a way she hadn't imagined possible. She had been broken, yes, but not irreparably. She had been sold, yes, but not defeated. And now she had a choice, a future, a life she could claim as her own. Illyra allowed herself a deep, steady breath. She could feel the strength in her leg, the clarity in her mind, the fire in her spirit. She had survived. She had endured. And now, she would live, not as the girl they sold for being lame, but as a woman of courage, resilience, and truth. And in the quiet glow of the cabin, surrounded by the wild beauty of the plains, Illyra finally felt what she had been denied her whole life: peace, purpose, and the unwavering certainty that her story was her own to write.